George Washington was a Virginia gentleman born into the colonial gentry, a man whose life would come to embody the very spirit of the emerging American nation, though in his early years, he was simply a boy growing up amidst the vast tobacco fields and rolling hills of Westmoreland County, Virginia. Born on February 22, 1732, Washington entered the world as the son of Augustine Washington, a planter of considerable landholdings, and Mary Ball Washington, his stoic and devout mother, whose influence would shape his character in ways subtle yet profound. The Washington family, while not of the highest aristocracy, held a position of prominence and respect in colonial Virginian society, owning extensive tracts of fertile land which defined their wealth and social status. This background provided young George with a foundation of privilege, though it was a privilege tempered by the realities of frontier life and the uncertainties of the colonial world in which he lived. Formal education was limited in the Washington household, as was common in the colonies at the time, especially on the frontier. George's schooling was largely conducted at home, overseen by tutors and guided by his mother, who valued discipline and moral instruction. Unlike the sons of wealthier families who might attend the great universities of England, Washington's education was practical and self-directed, involving a mixture of reading, writing, arithmetic, and the study of surveying, a skill which would come to define his early career and shape his understanding of the land he was destined to steward. It was this early fascination with surveying that took him beyond the confines of his family estate, leading him into the frontier wilderness of Western Virginia, where he mapped uncharted territories and gained first-hand experience of the rugged and often perilous life on the edge of the British colonies. As a young man, Washington's surveying expeditions imbued him with a deep appreciation for the vastness and potential of the American continent, but they also exposed him to the complex dynamics between the European settlers and the Native American tribes, as well as the competing claims of the British and French empires. These expeditions were more than mere professional exercises, they were formative experiences that introduced Washington to the realities of colonial expansion, diplomacy, and conflict. It was in this environment that he began to cultivate the qualities of leadership and resilience that would later define his military and political career. His ability to navigate the wildlands and negotiate with diverse groups hinted at the man he would become, a figure capable of uniting disparate interests under a common cause. The death of his half-brother, Lawrence Washington, marked a turning point in George's life, for it was then that he inherited the Mount Vernon estate, a sprawling plantation that would serve as his home and symbol of his status for decades to come. Lawrence had been both a mentor and an example to George, introducing him to the customs and responsibilities of Virginia's planter elite. With the inheritance of Mount Vernon, George Washington assumed the role of a planter himself, managing the estate's operations and labor, which included the difficult and morally complex institution of slavery that underpinned the economy of the southern colonies. He was now a man of property and consequence, his future firmly rooted in the soil of Virginia and the social order of the colonial gentry, yet his ambitions and experiences extended far beyond the tobacco fields. Washington's early military career commenced amidst the tensions that would soon erupt into the French and Indian War, a conflict that pitted the British colonies against French forces and their Native American allies over control of the vast territories of North America. Commissioned as a British colonial officer, Washington's role was to defend British territorial claims, and he quickly found himself thrust into the complexities of frontier warfare. His initial engagements, though marked by both successes and setbacks, demonstrated his courage and tactical acumen. He was involved in key skirmishes that tested his resolve and provided him with invaluable experience in leadership, logistics, and the harsh realities of war. It was during this time that he began to develop a reputation as a capable and determined officer, attributes that would serve him well in the years to come. This period of military service was crucial in shaping Washington's understanding of the limits and possibilities of British colonial power, as well as the challenges of commanding men in difficult and often hostile environments. Though still a young man, Washington's actions revealed a strategic mind and an unyielding commitment to duty, qualities that earned him the respect of his peers and superiors. His involvement in the French and Indian War also exposed him to the broader geopolitical struggles of the era, as Britain and France vied for dominance in the New World, a contest that would eventually set the stage for the American Revolution. Washington's early military career thus intertwines with the larger narrative of colonial ambition, imperial rivalry, and the contested nature of empire, all of which would profoundly influence his later leadership. Throughout these formative years, Washington's character was being quietly but steadily forged, a blend of Virginia planter, frontier soldier, and emerging leader. His early life was not marked by grandeur or immediate greatness, but by steady progress, practical learning, and an increasing sense of responsibility to his family, his land, and his country. He was a man shaped by the colonial experience, deeply connected to the land and people of Virginia, yet ever aware of the broader forces at play in the Atlantic world. The Mount Vernon estate stood as a testament to his heritage and his future, while his surveying expeditions and military service laid the groundwork for a destiny that would take him far beyond the limits of his youth. Washington's beginnings were humble in comparison to the monumental role he would come to play, but they were no less important, for they provided the roots from which the father of his country would grow and flourish. As the years progressed, George Washington's life took a decisive turn from that of a colonial officer and planter into the foremost leader of a revolutionary cause that would reshape the world. His transition from a British colonial officer to the commander-in-chief of the Continental Army was marked by a growing commitment to the ideals of liberty and self-determination, forged in the crucible of escalating tensions between the American colonies and the British Crown. Washington's political engagement deepened as he took up the mantle of a delegate to the First and later the Second Continental Congresses, where he stood as a steadfast advocate for colonial rights and resistance to what many colonists perceived as unjust British policies. It was here, in these early gatherings of American patriots, that Washington's leadership began to crystallize, not merely as a military figure but as a unifying symbol for a fractured people. When the Revolutionary War erupted, Washington was appointed commander-in-chief of the newly formed Continental Army, a position that would test every ounce of his resolve and skill. The fledgling army was a patchwork of militias and volunteers, lacking in discipline, training, and resources, yet Washington faced the enormous challenge of molding these disparate groups into a coherent fighting force capable of standing against the might of the British Empire. His leadership was tested immediately during the Siege of Boston, where the Continental forces sought to expel the British Army from the city, a campaign that demonstrated Washington's ability to manage limited supplies, maintain morale, and coordinate a protracted military effort under daunting conditions. Though the siege ultimately ended with the British evacuation, it was a hard-fought victory that gave the colonists hope and a measure of legitimacy. The subsequent campaigns proved even more demanding. Washington's army suffered a series of defeats and retreats, most notably the grueling loss in New York, where the British forces outmaneuvered and overwhelmed the Continental troops, forcing a difficult and perilous withdrawal across the state. These setbacks could have shattered the fragile revolutionary spirit, but Washington's endurance and leadership kept the cause alive. His strategic patience and unwavering commitment were exemplified in one of the most celebrated moments of the war, the daring crossing of the Delaware River on a cold winter night in 1776, which led to a surprise attack and a crucial victory at the Battle of Trenton. This bold maneuver revitalized the Continental Army and renewed the morale of the American people, proving that Washington was a leader capable of both vision and audacity. Perhaps the most harrowing test of Washington's leadership came during the winter at Valley Forge in 1777 to 1778, a time when the Continental Army faced starvation, disease, and bitter cold. The endurance and resilience he demonstrated in maintaining army morale and discipline amidst these dire conditions were nothing short of extraordinary. Washington's presence and personal example inspired his troops to persevere when many might have succumbed to despair. It was during this brutal winter that the Continental Army was transformed from a ragtag militia into a more professional and effective fighting force, thanks in part to the training and organization overseen by Baron von Steuben, but also due to Washington's steadfast leadership. The war dragged on with many difficult campaigns, but Washington's strategic patience and ability to hold the army together ultimately led to the decisive victory at Yorktown in 1781. This triumph effectively ended major combat operations, as British General Cornwallis surrendered his forces, signaling the collapse of British efforts to quell the rebellion. Washington's careful coordination with French allies and his ability to maintain unity among the often fractious colonial militias were key factors in this success. The victory at Yorktown was not simply a military achievement but a culmination of years of perseverance, sacrifice, and leadership under immense pressure. Throughout the Revolutionary War, Washington faced numerous challenges beyond the battlefield. Uniting the 13 colonies, each with its own interests, militias, and political factions, into a cohesive force was a monumental task. The Continental Congress often struggled to provide adequate support, funding, and supplies, leaving Washington to contend with shortages and logistical nightmares. Yet, his ability to navigate these difficulties and maintain the loyalty of his officers and men was a testament to his character and leadership. He was not only a commander but a symbol of the revolutionary cause, the embodiment of the struggle for independence and the hope for a new nation. Washington's leadership during the Revolution was marked by a remarkable blend of humility and authority. Unlike many leaders who might have seized power for personal gain, he understood the importance of serving the people and the cause above himself. His willingness to endure hardship alongside his troops, to make difficult decisions, and to maintain the delicate balance between military necessity and political considerations earned him widespread respect. His role extended beyond mere battlefield command. He was a unifying figure who inspired confidence in the fledgling republic and guided it through its most perilous hours. In these years of conflict and uncertainty, Washington's reputation grew not only as a military strategist but as a man of unwavering principles and steadfast determination. His leadership was crucial in transforming a loosely connected group of colonies into a nation capable of standing up to the British Empire. The experiences of the Revolutionary War shaped him profoundly, preparing him for the immense responsibilities that would follow in the years after independence. The Continental Army, once a disparate collection of militias, emerged under his command as the foundation of the United States military tradition, and Washington himself became the enduring symbol of American resilience and unity. Following the triumph at Yorktown and the conclusion of hostilities, George Washington withdrew from military service, returning to his beloved Mount Vernon, the estate that had long symbolized both his personal heritage and the agrarian roots of the new nation. Yet, retirement proved short-lived for Washington, whose sense of duty and vision for the fledgling country propelled him back into the political arena. The years following the Revolution were marked by uncertainty and fragile governance under the Articles of Confederation, and it was in this context that Washington took part in the Constitutional Convention of 1787, a gathering of delegates tasked with shaping a stronger, more effective federal government. His presence at the convention lent gravitas to the proceedings. Washington was not merely a figurehead but a guiding force whose support helped forge consensus among a wary assembly of statesmen. The Constitutional Convention itself was a crucible of competing interests and philosophies, yet Washington's reputation as a unifying leader helped steer the delegates toward agreement. His endorsement of the new Constitution was pivotal in securing its ratification, as many Americans looked to him as a symbol of stability and trustworthiness in a time of political flux. With the Constitution in place, the United States embarked on the monumental task of establishing a government that balanced federal authority with states' rights, promoted liberty while maintaining order, and sought to embody the Republican ideals for which the Revolution had been fought. Washington's role in this process was foundational, for he understood the delicate nature of this experiment in self-government and the necessity of strong, principled leadership to guide it forward. The unanimous election of George Washington as the first President of the United States in 1789 marked a historic moment for the nation. His acceptance of the office set important precedents for the new government, not least in his decision to voluntarily relinquish power after 2 terms, a practice that underscored the principles of Republican leadership and peaceful transitions of authority. Washington's presidency was characterized by an emphasis on national unity, the strengthening of federal institutions, and the establishment of practices that would define the office and the government for generations to come. He navigated the fledgling republic through uncharted waters, balancing competing regional interests, managing foreign relations with emerging world powers, and promoting economic policies aimed at stabilizing the country's finances. Washington's leadership during his presidency reflected the same qualities that had distinguished him on the battlefield: a commitment to duty, a sense of restraint, and a vision for a united nation. He was deeply aware of the risks posed by factionalism and partisan strife, cautioning against the dangers of political parties and sectionalism. His farewell address, delivered as he prepared to leave office, eloquently articulated these concerns and offered guidance for the preservation of the Republic. Throughout his 2 terms, Washington worked tirelessly to lay the groundwork for a strong federal government, supporting the creation of executive departments, endorsing the rule of law, and fostering a spirit of cooperation among the states. Foreign relations during Washington's presidency presented daunting challenges, as the young nation sought to assert its sovereignty while avoiding entanglement in the conflicts that roiled Europe. Washington's administration pursued a policy of neutrality, recognizing the importance of maintaining peace and stability in order to allow the United States to grow and consolidate its independence. His diplomatic efforts helped establish the country's place on the international stage, setting a tone of cautious engagement that would influence American foreign policy for decades. At home, he supported economic initiatives aimed at promoting trade, encouraging manufacturing, and stabilizing the national currency, recognizing that the prosperity of the republic depended on a sound and diversified economy. Perhaps most enduring was Washington's personal example. By voluntarily stepping down after 2 terms, he reinforced the principle that the presidency was not a position of royal privilege but a public trust to be held temporarily and responsibly. This act of humility and respect for democratic norms helped define the character of the American presidency and established a tradition that lasted until the 20th century and beyond. His commitment to national unity, his efforts to strengthen the federal government, and his vision for a republic governed by the rule of law left an indelible mark on the young nation. Washington's influence extended beyond policy and governance to the very idea of what it meant to be an American leader. He embodied the virtues of integrity, restraint, and dedication to the common good, qualities that earned him the enduring title of Father of his country. His presidency set standards for leadership that balanced authority with accountability, vision with pragmatism, and strength with humility. Through the trials of war and the challenges of peace, Washington's steady hand guided the United States from revolution to nationhood, and his legacy continued to shape American political culture long after he left office. In these years, the man who had once been a frontier surveyor and colonial officer became the architect of a new republic, steering it through the fragile early years of independence with wisdom and foresight. His role in the Constitutional Convention, his tenure as the nation's first president, and his conscious efforts to promote unity and democratic principles laid the foundation for the United States' enduring experiment in self-governance. Washington's leadership during this critical period was not merely about holding office, it was about forging the character and institutions of a country still very much in its infancy, ensuring that the ideals of the revolution would endure through the challenges of nation building. If you loved the story, like the video and subscribe. John Adams was a key founding father and later became the second President of the United States, born on October 30, 1735, in Braintree, Massachusetts, which was then a modest Puritan town. His family was of simple means but deeply rooted in the Puritan traditions that shaped much of New England's early culture and values. Adams attended Harvard College, graduating in 1755, after which he pursued a career in law, a profession that suited his sharp mind and strong sense of justice. He quickly established himself as a prominent lawyer in Boston, gaining respect for his legal expertise and moral integrity at a time when the colonies were grappling with increasing tensions under British rule. His marriage in 1764 to Abigail Smith was a significant partnership, not only personally but politically, as Abigail's intelligence and support deeply influenced Adams's thinking and public career. Early on, Adams became involved in colonial politics, opposing British policies such as the Stamp Act of 1765, which imposed direct taxes on the colonies and sparked widespread protest. He developed a reputation as a fierce advocate for colonial rights and justice, often arguing against what he saw as unfair treatment by the British Crown. His legal career and political activism were intertwined, and he used his skills to defend colonial interests, embracing the growing sentiment for greater autonomy. Adams's early opposition to British policies was grounded in his belief that the colonies deserved fair representation and that the rule of law should protect individual liberties. He was not, at this stage, calling outright for independence, but his arguments laid important groundwork for the revolutionary ideas that would soon follow. Adams's work as a lawyer was marked by several notable cases where he defended unpopular clients, including British soldiers involved in the Boston Massacre of 1770. Despite the unpopularity of his clients, Adams insisted on the right to a fair trial, demonstrating his commitment to legal principles over popular opinion. This episode helped establish his reputation as a principled man of law and order, someone who valued justice even when it was difficult or unpopular. His legal career gave him a platform to voice his concerns about the growing overreach of British authority in colonial affairs, and he became an important figure in Boston's political circles. His marriage to Abigail Smith was more than a personal union, it was a partnership that deeply influenced his political outlook. Abigail was well educated for a woman of her time and maintained a lively correspondence with her husband throughout their lives, often advising him on political matters and expressing her views on liberty and governance. Their letters reveal a relationship of mutual respect and intellectual exchange, and Abigail's influence on Adams was significant in shaping his views on the rights of individuals and the responsibilities of government. This partnership would continue to be a source of strength throughout Adams's public life. As tensions between the colonies and Britain escalated in the 1760s and early 1770s, Adams became increasingly involved in the movement opposing British policies. He spoke out against the Stamp Act and other measures that he believed infringed on colonial rights, aligning himself with other early patriots who sought to defend the liberties of the American colonists. His legal expertise and political convictions made him a natural leader in this emerging resistance. Adams was known for his eloquence and his ability to articulate the colonial grievances in legal and moral terms, which helped galvanize support among his peers. Adams's early political involvement was characterized by a growing belief that the colonies needed to assert their rights more forcefully, though he remained cautious about outright rebellion. He was a thinker who valued order and law but also recognized when those in power were unjust, and his writings and speeches during this period reflect a careful balance between advocating for change and maintaining stability. This stance made him a respected voice in the colonial assemblies and town meetings where debates about the future of the colonies were intensifying. Throughout the 1760s and early 1770s, Adams's reputation as a defender of colonial rights grew, and he began to be seen as a leading figure in Massachusetts politics. His legal career, his principled stand during the Boston Massacre trials, and his outspoken opposition to British taxation policies positioned him as a key advocate for American interests. He was seen as someone who could navigate the complexities of law and politics with a clear moral compass, which earned him the trust of many fellow colonists who were seeking leadership in a time of uncertainty. By the early 1770s, Adams's role in the political landscape of Massachusetts was firmly established, and he was preparing to take on larger responsibilities as the colonies moved closer to open conflict with Britain. His early experiences in law and politics, combined with his strong partnership with Abigail, laid the foundation for his later work in the Continental Congress and the American Revolution. Adams's early life and career reflect the tensions and challenges of a colonial society on the brink of transformation, and his efforts helped shape the emerging American identity rooted in principles of justice and liberty. Adams's background as a Puritan New Englander influenced his values deeply, emphasizing hard work, education, and a commitment to community and morality. These values informed his approach to law and politics and helped him maintain a steady course during the turbulent years that followed. His education at Harvard provided him with the intellectual tools to engage in complex legal and political debates, and his early career demonstrated his ability to apply those tools effectively in defense of colonial rights. In summary, John Adams's early life and education set the stage for his later prominence as a founding father. Born into a modest family, educated at Harvard, and trained as a lawyer, he combined legal skill with a passionate commitment to justice and colonial rights. His marriage to Abigail Smith was a crucial partnership that enriched his political life, and his early opposition to British policies established him as a principled advocate for the American cause. These years formed the groundwork for Adams's significant contributions to the American Revolution and the founding of the United States. John Adams's role in the American Revolution and his subsequent diplomatic efforts marked a pivotal chapter in his life and in the history of the United States. After establishing himself as a prominent lawyer and early advocate for colonial rights, Adams became a delegate to the Continental Congress, where he emerged as a strong voice for independence from Britain. His legal background and eloquence made him an influential figure in the debates that shaped the future of the colonies during this critical period. Adams was not only a political leader but also a skilled negotiator who understood the importance of foreign alliances and the practicalities of war. In 1776, Adams played a crucial role in the drafting of the Declaration of Independence, working alongside Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and others. While Jefferson is often credited as the principal author, Adams was a key advocate for the document within the Congress and helped refine its language and arguments. His commitment to the cause of independence was unwavering, and he understood that the colonies needed to present a united and compelling case to both their own people and the world. Adams's contributions helped ensure that the Declaration articulated the fundamental principles of liberty and self-governance that would define the new nation. Beyond his work on the Declaration, Adams served on various committees within the Continental Congress, including those responsible for foreign diplomacy and managing the war effort. He recognized early on that the success of the revolution depended not only on military victories but also on securing international support. This understanding led to his appointment as a diplomat to France, a critical ally whose support would prove vital to the American cause. Adams's diplomatic mission was challenging, as he had to navigate the complex politics of Europe while advocating for American interests. In France, Adams worked tirelessly to maintain and strengthen the alliance that had begun with the Treaty of Alliance in 1778. He collaborated with Benjamin Franklin and other American diplomats to secure financial aid, military supplies, and political backing. The support from France, including troops and naval forces, was essential in turning the tide of the war in favor of the Americans. Adams's diplomatic efforts helped solidify this alliance, demonstrating his ability to operate effectively on the international stage and to advance the revolutionary cause beyond the battlefield. Following his time in France, Adams was sent to the Netherlands, where he successfully negotiated loans that provided crucial financial support for the war. These loans helped sustain the Continental Army and kept the revolutionary effort viable during difficult times. Adams's work in the Netherlands further underscored his role as a diplomat who could secure resources and legitimacy for the fledgling United States. His ability to engage with foreign governments and financiers was instrumental in ensuring that the revolution had the means to continue against a powerful British Empire. One of Adams's most significant achievements as a diplomat was his involvement in negotiating the Treaty of Paris in 1783, which officially ended the Revolutionary War. Alongside John Jay and Benjamin Franklin, Adams helped secure terms that recognized American independence and established boundaries for the new nation. The treaty was a diplomatic triumph, confirming the success of the revolution and laying the groundwork for the United States to emerge as an independent country on the world stage. Adams's contributions to this agreement reflected his deep understanding of international law and diplomacy, as well as his commitment to securing a lasting peace. After the war, Adams returned to the United States to participate in the creation of a new government under the Constitution. His experiences during the Revolution and in diplomacy gave him a unique perspective on the challenges facing the young nation. Adams advocated for a strong central government that could maintain order, protect liberties, and manage relations with other countries. He was wary of excessive democracy unchecked by institutions, believing that a balance of power was necessary to prevent chaos and tyranny. This viewpoint influenced his role in shaping the early republic and its governing structures. Adams's diplomatic career during and after the Revolution demonstrated his versatility as both a political leader and a statesman. While many of his contemporaries focused primarily on military or legislative roles, Adams combined legal expertise, political philosophy, and international savvy to advance the American cause. His work helped ensure that the revolution was not only fought on American soil but also supported abroad, which was critical to its ultimate success. Adams's ability to navigate the complexities of international diplomacy underscored his importance as one of the founding figures of the United States. Throughout this period, Adams maintained a steady commitment to the principles of justice and liberty that had motivated his earlier political activism. He understood that independence was only the first step in a long process of nation building, and he devoted himself to securing the foundations of a stable and effective government. His diplomatic achievements were matched by his efforts to foster unity among the states and to promote a vision of the United States as a respected member of the global community. Adams's work during the Revolution and its aftermath solidified his reputation as a dedicated patriot and skilled statesman. Adams's tenure as a diplomat was not without challenges. He often faced disagreements with fellow American representatives and the difficulties inherent in negotiating with foreign powers whose interests did not always align perfectly with those of the United States. Nevertheless, his persistence and principled approach allowed him to overcome obstacles and achieve significant successes. His diplomatic missions required patience, tact, and a clear understanding of both American goals and European politics, qualities that Adams demonstrated throughout his service. In summary, John Adams's role in the American Revolution and diplomacy was multifaceted and crucial. As a delegate to the Continental Congress, he advocated for independence and helped draft the Declaration of Independence. His diplomatic missions to France and the Netherlands secured vital support and loans, and he played a key role in negotiating the Treaty of Paris that ended the war. Returning to the United States, Adams contributed to the formation of the new government under the Constitution, emphasizing a strong central authority. These efforts highlight Adams's importance not only as a revolutionary leader but also as a diplomat who helped establish the United States as an independent nation on the world stage. John Adams was elected as the second President of the United States, serving from 1797 to 1801, a period marked by significant challenges both abroad and at home. His presidency came at a time when the young nation was still defining its place in the world and navigating the complexities of its newfound independence. One of the most pressing issues during Adams's time in office was the Quasi-War with France, an undeclared naval conflict that tested American diplomacy and military readiness. Despite the difficulties, Adams was committed to maintaining peace and stability, advocating for a strong central government that could effectively manage domestic and foreign affairs. The Quasi-War arose from tensions with France, which objected to American neutrality in the ongoing conflict between France and Britain. French privateers began seizing American ships, and diplomatic relations deteriorated rapidly. Adams faced pressure from factions within the United States who called for war, but he chose a path of cautious diplomacy, seeking to avoid a full-scale conflict while strengthening the nation's defenses. His administration expanded the Navy and prepared for potential hostilities, but Adams remained committed to peaceful resolution through negotiation rather than escalation. Domestically, Adams's presidency was marked by political strife as the country's two emerging parties, the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans, clashed over the direction of the nation. Adams himself was a Federalist who believed in a strong central government and the importance of law and order. However, his administration faced criticism from opponents who accused him of being too authoritarian, particularly after the passage of the Alien and Sedition Acts, which were intended to suppress dissent and limit the influence of foreign nationals but were viewed by many as infringements on civil liberties. These acts stirred controversy and deepened partisan divisions, challenging Adams's leadership and legacy. Despite the internal conflicts and external pressures, Adams maintained a steady commitment to the principles he believed essential for the survival and growth of the United States. He emphasized the importance of neutrality in foreign conflicts, recognizing that the young nation was not yet prepared to engage in wars on multiple fronts. His foreign policy aimed to protect American interests while avoiding entanglements that could jeopardize the country's stability. This cautious approach was reflective of Adams's broader vision of governance, which prioritized prudent decision-making and the rule of law. Adams's presidency also set an important democratic precedent in the peaceful transfer of power. In the election of 1800, he lost to Thomas Jefferson, his political rival and a leader of the Democratic Republican Party. Despite the bitter campaign and the intense political rivalry, Adams accepted the results and facilitated an orderly transition to Jefferson's administration. This act of respecting the electoral process and relinquishing power without resistance was a significant moment in American history, reinforcing the principles of democracy and the peaceful succession of government. Following his presidency, Adams retired to Massachusetts, where he continued to engage in correspondence with fellow founders, including Thomas Jefferson. Their letters reflected a complex relationship marked by both political disagreement and mutual respect. These exchanges provided insight into the evolving ideas about government, liberty, and the future of the United States. Adams's post-presidential years were a time of reflection and continued involvement in the intellectual and political debates that shaped the nation. Adams died on July 4, 1826, the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, a symbolic coincidence that underscored his lasting impact on the United States. His death on this significant date, along with that of Thomas Jefferson on the same day, was seen by many as a powerful reminder of the contributions these men made to the founding and shaping of the nation. Adams's legacy as a patriot, statesman, and principled leader endured, influencing American government and political thought for generations to come. During his presidency, Adams faced the challenge of balancing competing interests within the country while managing delicate international relations. His commitment to a strong yet limited government reflected his belief that the republic needed order and stability to flourish. He worked to strengthen the federal government's institutions and asserted the authority necessary to maintain national security. However, his policies sometimes alienated segments of the population who feared the erosion of individual freedoms, illustrating the difficulties inherent in governing a diverse and divided nation. The political climate of Adams's presidency was marked by intense factionalism, with the Federalists and Democratic Republicans vying for influence. Adams's Federalist Party generally supported a robust federal government, commercial interests, and closer ties with Britain, while the Democratic Republicans favored states' rights, agrarianism, and sympathy toward France. This ideological divide shaped much of the political discourse and policy decisions during Adams's tenure. Navigating this polarized environment required careful diplomacy and political skill, qualities Adams exhibited despite facing criticism and opposition from both sides. Adams's approach to the Quasi-War exemplified his preference for measured responses over rash actions. While he authorized the build-up of the Navy and prepared the country for potential conflict, he also pursued diplomatic channels to resolve disputes with France. His efforts culminated in the Convention of 1800, which formally ended hostilities and restored peaceful relations between the two nations. This resolution demonstrated Adams's dedication to peace and his ability to prioritize the nation's long-term interests over short-term political gains. The Alien and Sedition Acts passed during Adams's administration remain among the most controversial aspects of his presidency. These laws extended the residency requirement for citizenship and criminalized making false statements against the federal government. Federalists argued that these measures were necessary to protect the nation from foreign influence and internal subversion during a volatile period. However, critics saw them as violations of free speech and political repression. The backlash contributed to the decline of the Federalist Party and Adams's loss in the 1800 election, highlighting the challenges of balancing security and liberty. After leaving office, Adams's continued correspondence with Jefferson and other founders revealed his ongoing engagement with the issues facing the Republic. Despite their earlier political rivalry, Adams and Jefferson reconciled in their later years, sharing reflections on the American experiment and the principles of Republican government. Their letters remain valuable historical documents, shedding light on the perspectives of two of the nation's most influential figures. In all, John Adams's presidency was a time of testing and transformation for the United States. His leadership during the Quasi-War, his navigation of domestic political strife, and his peaceful transfer of power contributed to the stability and development of the young republic. Though his administration faced criticism and controversy, Adams's dedication to the principles of governance, law, and diplomacy left a lasting imprint on the nation's political landscape. If you loved the story, like the video and subscribe. Alexander Hamilton, born in the West Indies on January 11, 1755, or some sources say 1757, there's a bit of uncertainty there, emerged from what most would consider humble and even tragic beginnings, being orphaned at a young age in a small Caribbean island called Nevis. So, Hamilton's early life was marked by hardship, and if you think about it, it's quite remarkable how he transformed that adversity into a relentless drive that propelled him across the ocean to the American colonies. Now, despite the lack of formal schooling typical of his time and place, Hamilton was largely self-taught, which is pretty impressive considering the breadth of his later accomplishments. He showed exceptional intellect and a talent for writing early on, and this was recognized by local benefactors who sponsored his education in New York, which was a major turning point. This sponsorship wasn't just a handout, it was a recognition of his potential, and Hamilton seized it with everything he had. Once in New York, Hamilton's education really took off, but what's interesting is that he didn't limit himself to just studying. He worked as a clerk, which gave him practical experience and exposure to the world of commerce and politics that was bubbling under the surface in the colonies. This combination of self-education and real-world work experience helped shape his understanding of economic and political systems, which would become crucial later on. And it was during this period that Hamilton's revolutionary ideas began to take form. The American colonies were tense places at that moment, with growing dissatisfaction toward British rule, and Hamilton's writings reflect this, showing his deep engagement with the cause of liberty and independence. When the Revolutionary War broke out, Hamilton didn't hesitate to throw himself fully into the fight. He joined the Continental Army, and his remarkable abilities quickly became evident, leading to his appointment as aide-de-camp to General George Washington. This role was significant because it placed Hamilton at the heart of the revolutionary leadership, giving him direct access to Washington and a front-row seat to the strategies and decisions that would define the war. It was a position that required not just military skill but also intelligence, loyalty, and the ability to communicate effectively, all of which Hamilton possessed in abundance. Hamilton's military career was marked by active leadership in several key engagements. One of the most notable was his role in the decisive assault at Yorktown, which effectively ended the war in favor of the American colonies. Hamilton's leadership there demonstrated both his bravery and his strategic insight, qualities that earned him respect from his peers and superiors. But beyond the battlefield, Hamilton's political acumen was also on full display. He used his pen as much as his sword, drafting important documents and speeches that rallied support for the patriot cause. This dual capacity as soldier and statesman was unusual but incredibly effective, showcasing Hamilton's multifaceted talents. Throughout the war, Hamilton's influence grew steadily. He wasn't just a military figure, he was deeply involved in the ideological and political battles that were shaping the emerging nation. His vision was clear. He believed in a strong centralized government that could unify the disparate states and provide a stable foundation for the new republic. This was a somewhat controversial stance at the time, as many favored more power for the individual states, but Hamilton's arguments were persuasive, grounded in his understanding of the weaknesses exposed by the war and the need for a cohesive national policy. This vision led Hamilton to play a crucial role in the Constitutional Convention, where the framework for the United States government was debated and drafted. His contributions were substantial, and he was one of the leading voices advocating for the ratification of the Constitution. To support this cause, Hamilton became a principal author of the Federalist Papers, a series of essays that explained and defended the new Constitution to the public. These writings remain some of the most important documents in American political history, illustrating Hamilton's intellectual rigor and his commitment to the principles he believed would secure the nation's future. Now, if you consider Hamilton's trajectory, from a self-educated orphan in the Caribbean to a central figure in the founding of the United States, it really tells you something about his character and talents. He was undeniably driven, and while some criticized him for being ambitious or even ruthless, it's hard to deny that his ambition was matched by a deep dedication to the nation's success. Hamilton's early life set the stage for his later achievements, and it's fascinating to see how his personal story intertwined with the broader story of America's birth. So, by the time the war was winding down, Hamilton was not just a military hero but also a rising political thinker whose ideas were shaping the future of the country. His early experiences, marked by hardship, self-education, and early revolutionary zeal, provided the foundation for his later role in building the American financial system and government institutions. It's a story of transformation, really, and it highlights how individual determination and intellect can influence the course of history. Hamilton's life at this stage was already a testament to the power of perseverance and vision, setting up the next chapters of his extraordinary career. Moving forward from his early military service, Alexander Hamilton's role in the Revolutionary War grew increasingly significant, and it's worth noting that he wasn't just some background figure. He was actively leading troops in key battles, showing a mix of courage and strategic thinking that really set him apart. One of the standout moments was his leadership in the decisive assault at Yorktown in 1781, which was essentially the final major battle of the war, and it's often credited with securing American victory over the British. Hamilton's command in that assault demonstrated not only his bravery but also his ability to plan and execute complex military operations under intense pressure, which earned him considerable respect from both his comrades and superiors alike. But Hamilton's contributions didn't stop on the battlefield. He was also a rising political figure during the war, using his exceptional writing skills and influence to support the patriot cause beyond the fighting. He penned important documents and speeches that helped rally support and articulate the principles behind the revolution, which was crucial in maintaining morale and unity among the colonies. His talents as a writer and thinker were instrumental in shaping public opinion and giving the revolution a coherent ideological foundation. You could say that Hamilton was as much a soldier of ideas as he was a soldier in arms, which was a powerful combination. As the war concluded and the new nation faced the daunting task of creating a stable government, Hamilton's vision became increasingly clear and influential. He was a strong advocate for a centralized federal government, believing that a unified authority was essential to hold the fledgling states together and address the economic and political chaos that threatened the young republic. This was a contentious position, especially since many Americans feared centralized power due to their recent experience with British rule, but Hamilton argued that without a strong central government, the nation would be unable to thrive or defend itself effectively. This belief led Hamilton to take a central role in the Constitutional Convention of 1787, where the framework for the United States government was debated and ultimately drafted. Hamilton pushed for a system that would balance power between the states and the federal government while ensuring the latter had enough authority to govern effectively. His input during the convention was substantial, and although not all his proposals were adopted, his influence on the final constitution was significant. He understood that the success of the new nation hinged on creating institutions that could sustain order, promote economic growth, and protect individual liberties. To promote and defend the new constitution, Hamilton became one of the principal authors of the Federalist Papers, a series of essays written with James Madison and John Jay. These essays were designed to explain the Constitution's provisions to the public and persuade skeptics that the document would create a balanced and effective government. Hamilton's contributions to the Federalist Papers are particularly notable for their detailed arguments in favor of a strong executive branch and a robust federal government. These writings not only helped secure the ratification of the Constitution but also remain foundational texts for understanding American political theory. Hamilton's work during this period highlights his unique ability to combine practical experience with intellectual rigor. He was not just arising from an academic distance, he had first-hand knowledge of the challenges facing the new nation, from military defense to economic stability. This practical insight informed his advocacy for policies that would strengthen the government's capacity to manage debt, regulate commerce, and maintain public order. In many ways, Hamilton was laying the groundwork for modern American governance, advocating for structures and policies that could support a complex and growing nation. Throughout the post-war years, Hamilton's political influence continued to expand, and he positioned himself as a leading figure among the Federalists, the political faction that supported his vision of a strong national government. His ideas often put him at odds with other prominent leaders, especially Thomas Jefferson and his followers, who favored more power for the states and a more agrarian vision of America. This rivalry was not just political but also ideological, reflecting deep divisions over the direction the country should take. Hamilton's stance, however, was rooted in his belief that economic development, a strong financial system, and centralized authority were essential for the United States to fulfill its promise. What's remarkable about Hamilton's role in this era is how he leveraged both his military reputation and his intellectual contributions to shape the emerging political landscape. He was a visionary in the sense that he saw beyond the immediate challenges of the Revolution and sought to build a system that could endure and support growth for generations to come. His work on the Federalist Papers and his advocacy at the Constitutional Convention are enduring testaments to his commitment to this goal. Hamilton's ideas about governance, finance, and national unity set the stage for the policies he would implement later as the nation's first Secretary of the Treasury. So, during this transformative period following the Revolutionary War, Hamilton was not simply riding the wave of victory, he was actively shaping what victory would mean for America's future. His efforts to promote a strong, centralized government and to articulate the principles underlying the Constitution helped define the political framework that the United States would operate under. Hamilton's ability to bridge the gap between revolutionary ideals and practical governance was crucial in transitioning the country from a loose confederation of states into a more cohesive and functional republic. His contributions during this time underscore why he remains such a vital figure in American history, embodying the complex interplay between war, politics, and nation-building. Alexander Hamilton's tenure as the first Secretary of the Treasury really marked the beginning of a new era in American governance, where his vision for a strong financial system took concrete shape, and it's fascinating to see how he laid down the foundations that would support the young republic's economic growth and stability. When Hamilton took office, the United States was burdened with significant debt from the Revolutionary War, and the economy was fragile and fragmented. So, his first priority was to create a financial framework that could manage this debt responsibly and instill confidence both domestically and internationally. This was no small task, and his approach was bold and innovative for the time. One of Hamilton's most notable achievements was the establishment of the National Bank, which was designed to stabilize the currency, facilitate government financing, and support economic development. The idea of a national bank was controversial, with opponents like Thomas Jefferson arguing that it was unconstitutional and favored wealthy elites, but Hamilton's vision was rooted in the belief that a central financial institution was essential for managing the country's credit and encouraging investment. He argued that the bank would provide a reliable mechanism for handling government funds and issuing currency, which would, in turn, promote commerce and industry. This was a foundational step in creating a modern financial system in the United States. In addition to the national bank, Hamilton also devised policies for federal debt management, which included the federal government assuming state debts incurred during the war. This assumption plan was designed to unify the states under a common financial policy and establish the creditworthiness of the new government. By consolidating the debts, Hamilton ensured that the federal government would have the means to borrow money on favorable terms, which was vital for economic expansion and national security. This approach was also politically strategic, as it tied the interests of the states to the success of the federal government, fostering a sense of unity and shared responsibility. Hamilton's economic policies extended beyond debt management and banking. He advocated for tariffs and excise taxes to generate government revenue, which was necessary to fund public expenses without relying solely on borrowing. His financial program aimed to create a self-sustaining government that could support its obligations and invest in infrastructure and defense. These policies helped lay the groundwork for the emergence of the United States as a stable economic power, capable of competing on the international stage. Of course, Hamilton's initiatives were not without opposition. His political battles, especially with figures like Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr, were intense and sometimes personal. Jefferson's vision of an agrarian society with limited federal power clashed directly with Hamilton's industrial and centralized government ideas. This rivalry shaped much of the early political landscape of the United States, with the Federalists, led by Hamilton, advocating for strong national institutions, and the Republicans, led by Jefferson, emphasizing states' rights and rural interests. These debates were foundational to the development of the American political party system. The tension between Hamilton and Aaron Burr also culminated in one of the most infamous episodes in American history, the Duel of 1804. Burr, who was a political rival and perceived threat to Hamilton's influence, challenged him to a duel that tragically ended Hamilton's life. This event shocked the nation and underscored the intense personal and political conflicts of the time. Despite Hamilton's controversial and sometimes divisive nature, his death was widely mourned, and it marked the loss of one of the most dynamic and visionary leaders of the early republic. Hamilton's lasting impact on American governance and finance cannot be overstated. His ideas and policies established many of the principles and institutions that continue to underpin the United States economic system. From the national bank to federal debt management, his work helped transform a fledgling revolutionary state into a more stable and prosperous nation. Hamilton's influence extended beyond his lifetime, shaping the trajectory of American economic policy and governance for centuries to come. Reflecting on Hamilton's legacy during this period, it's clear that he was a visionary leader whose ideas often challenged the status quo but ultimately helped define the character of the American government. His commitment to strong national institutions and economic development was critical in the nation's transition from chaos to order, and his work set precedents that still resonate in contemporary debates about federal power and economic policy. Hamilton's story during this era is one of ambition, innovation, and enduring influence, highlighting why he remains a central figure in understanding the founding and development of the United States. If you loved the story, like the video and subscribe. Thomas Jefferson was a founding father of the United States, best known as the principal author of the Declaration of Independence and later as the nation's third president. Born on April 13, 1743, in Shadwell, Virginia, Jefferson entered the world as part of a wealthy planter family, which shaped much of his early life and prospects. His upbringing was steeped in the traditions of Virginia's landed gentry, a class that held considerable influence in colonial society. From a young age, Jefferson was exposed to the privileges and responsibilities that came with such a status, including the ownership of extensive land and enslaved people, a fact that would later complicate his legacy. He grew up on the family estate where the rhythms of plantation life intertwined with the intellectual currents that would come to define his personal and political philosophy. Jefferson's education began at home, where he was taught the classics, including Latin, Greek, and French, languages that were considered essential for a gentleman and scholar in the 18th century. This classical education was designed not only to prepare him for a career but also to cultivate a broad understanding of the world, reflecting the Enlightenment ideals that were gaining ground in Europe and the American colonies. Jefferson's intellectual curiosity was evident early on, and he was known to be an avid reader with a particular interest in philosophy, science, and architecture. His pursuit of knowledge was not limited to books. He was fascinated by the natural world and sought to understand it through empirical observation and reason. At the age of 16, Jefferson enrolled at the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia, an institution that provided him with a more formal education and exposed him to influential thinkers and political ideas. The college was a hub for Enlightenment thought in the colonies, and Jefferson absorbed the lessons of philosophers such as John Locke, whose concepts of natural rights and government by consent would heavily influence Jefferson's own political philosophy. During his time at William and Mary, Jefferson studied law, a profession that promised both prestige and a platform from which to engage in public affairs. By his early 20s, Jefferson had completed his legal training and was admitted to the Virginia bar, ready to embark on a career that would blend law, politics, and intellectual inquiry. Inheriting his family's estates after the death of his father, Jefferson found himself responsible not only for managing large tracts of land but also for the hundreds of enslaved people who labored there. This aspect of his life was inseparable from the social and economic fabric of Virginia at the time. Jefferson's relationship with slavery was complex and contradictory. While he expressed philosophical opposition to the institution and included language condemning slavery in early drafts of the Declaration of Independence, he never freed more than a handful of his own slaves during his lifetime. His ownership of slaves was a stark contrast to his public advocacy for liberty and equality and remains one of the most debated aspects of his legacy. The realities of plantation life and the economy of the South were deeply ingrained in Jefferson's world, influencing both his personal circumstances and political decisions. Beyond his legal and political ambitions, Jefferson was deeply engaged in the arts and sciences. He was an accomplished architect, designing his own home, Monticello, which embodied his ideals of symmetry, classical beauty, and harmony with nature. Monticello was more than a residence, it was a reflection of Jefferson's intellectual pursuits and his desire to apply reason and innovation to everyday life. His interest in architecture was part of a broader Enlightenment ideal that valued progress and the improvement of society through knowledge. Jefferson also pursued scientific studies, particularly in areas such as agriculture, paleontology, and meteorology. His extensive library, which eventually formed the basis of the Library of Congress collection, was a testament to his lifelong dedication to learning and to spreading knowledge. Jefferson's early life and education set the foundation for his later political career and his role in the founding of the United States. The classical education he received, combined with his exposure to Enlightenment ideas and his practical experience as a planter and lawyer, shaped his vision of a republic grounded in individual rights, limited government, and the rule of law. His upbringing in Virginia, a colony that was at the heart of revolutionary thought and action, placed him at the center of the emerging movement for American independence. The contradictions of his personal life, especially regarding slavery, mirrored the tensions within the new nation itself, which sought to balance ideals of freedom with entrenched social and economic realities. As Jefferson moved from his early years into public life, the influences of his upbringing and education remained evident. His belief in reason, education, and the power of ideas would guide his contributions to American political thought and governance. Yet, the complexities of his personal circumstances, including his status as a slave owner and planter, foreshadowed the challenges that would define his legacy. Understanding Jefferson's early life is essential to grasping the man who would go on to articulate the principles of American liberty and democracy, even as he lived within a society marked by profound inequalities. This formative period offers insight into the contradictions and aspirations that shaped both Jefferson himself and the nation he helped to found. Jefferson's entry into public life began with his service in the Virginia House of Burgesses, where he quickly established himself as a vocal advocate for colonial rights and self-government. In this colonial legislature, Jefferson worked alongside other emerging leaders who shared a growing dissatisfaction with British policies, particularly those that imposed taxes and restricted the autonomy of the colonies. His time in the House of Burgesses was marked by a commitment to the principles of liberty and limited government, ideas that had been nurtured during his education and early experiences. Jefferson's speeches and writings from this period reveal his belief that government should derive its authority from the consent of the governed and that individuals possessed inherent rights that no ruler could justly violate. One of Jefferson's most significant early political accomplishments was the drafting of the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom in 1777, which was enacted in 1786. This statute was a landmark in the separation of church and state, asserting that no person should be compelled to support any religious worship or ministry and that religious beliefs were a matter of individual conscience. The statute reflected Jefferson's deep commitment to religious liberty, an ideal that was revolutionary in a time when many colonies and states maintained established churches supported by public taxes. Jefferson believed that freedom of religion was essential to a free society and that government should neither favor nor interfere with religious practice. This principle would later be enshrined in the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. Jefferson's role on the national stage became most prominent with his appointment as the primary author of the Declaration of Independence in 1776. Tasked with articulating the colony's reasons for seeking independence from Britain, Jefferson crafted a document that eloquently expressed the ideals of liberty, equality, and the right of people to overthrow oppressive governments. The Declaration laid out a vision of government grounded in natural rights, famously declaring that all men are created equal and endowed with unalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Jefferson's words not only justified the revolution but also set a philosophical foundation for the new nation. The Declaration's emphasis on individual rights and popular sovereignty would resonate through American political thought and inspire movements for freedom worldwide. During the Revolutionary War, Jefferson served as governor of Virginia from 1779 to 1781, a period marked by military threats and internal challenges. As governor, he faced the daunting task of managing wartime logistics, defending the colony against British incursions, and maintaining civil order. His tenure was complicated by tensions between civil authority and military commanders, as well as the economic difficulties caused by the war. Jefferson's leadership during this time reflected his dedication to the revolutionary cause, though it was also marked by criticism from political opponents who questioned his decisions and effectiveness. Nevertheless, his service as governor placed him at the heart of the struggle for American independence and deepened his experience in governance during crisis. Following his governorship, Jefferson represented Virginia in the Continental Congress, participating in the debates and decisions that shaped the emerging United States. His time in Congress allowed him to engage with other revolutionary leaders on issues ranging from military strategy to diplomacy and governance. Jefferson's diplomatic skills were further tested when he was appointed minister to France in 1785, a critical role given France's importance as an ally during the war and its influence in European politics. In Paris, Jefferson worked to strengthen the Franco-American alliance, negotiate trade agreements, and promote American interests abroad. His experience in France exposed him to European Enlightenment ideas and the complexities of international diplomacy, broadening his perspective on government and society. One of Jefferson's most notable achievements during his diplomatic career was his involvement in the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. Although this event occurred after his time in France, his earlier diplomatic experience and vision for the United States influenced the decision to acquire the vast territory from France. The Louisiana Purchase doubled the size of the young nation, opening vast lands for settlement and expansion. Jefferson saw this acquisition as essential to fulfilling America's agrarian ideal, providing land for independent farmers who would form the backbone of the Republic. The purchase also demonstrated Jefferson's pragmatic approach to governance, willing to embrace constitutional flexibility to achieve national goals, despite earlier reservations about executive power. Throughout these years, Jefferson's political philosophy remained centered on the ideals of limited government, individual rights, and republicanism. He believed that the strength of the United States lay in its commitment to these principles and that the government's role should be to protect the freedoms of its citizens without imposing unnecessary restrictions. Jefferson's advocacy for religious freedom, his authorship of the Declaration of Independence, and his diplomatic efforts all reflected this vision. At the same time, his experiences exposed him to the practical challenges of leadership during revolution and nation-building, shaping his approach to policy and governance in the years to come. Jefferson's contributions during the Revolutionary period and early national era were instrumental in defining the character and direction of the United States. His work in Virginia's legislature, his authorship of foundational documents, and his diplomatic service illustrated his commitment to creating a nation based on liberty and justice. Yet, these accomplishments were also entwined with the contradictions of the time, including the persistence of slavery and debates over the balance of power between federal and state governments. Jefferson's political career during this period set the stage for his later roles in the federal government, where he would continue to influence the young republic's trajectory and grapple with the complexities inherent in translating revolutionary ideals into lasting institutions. Thomas Jefferson was elected the third President of the United States, serving 2 terms from 1801 to 1809, a period that would define much of his political legacy and shape the early republic's direction. His presidency was marked by a commitment to policies that reflected his vision of limited government, agrarianism, and westward expansion. Jefferson believed that the strength and virtue of the nation depended on independent farmers who owned their land and were free from the influence of concentrated wealth or centralized authority. This agrarian ideal guided many of his decisions as president and underscored his efforts to promote the growth and development of the country's western territories. One of the most significant achievements of Jefferson's presidency was the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, which doubled the size of the United States overnight. This acquisition from France opened vast new lands for settlement and economic opportunity, fulfilling Jefferson's vision of an expanding agrarian republic. Despite his earlier strict interpretation of the Constitution, which made him wary of executive overreach, Jefferson embraced the purchase as a practical necessity for the nation's future. The Louisiana Purchase not only secured control of the Mississippi River and the port of New Orleans but also laid the groundwork for the United States to become a continental power. Jefferson's willingness to adapt his principles in this instance demonstrated his pragmatism and foresight. Jefferson also supported the Lewis and Clark expedition, commissioning Meriwether Lewis and William Clark to explore the western territories acquired through the Louisiana Purchase and beyond. This expedition, which began in 1804, was crucial for mapping the vast lands, establishing American claims, and seeking routes to the Pacific Ocean. The journey reflected Jefferson's deep interest in science, geography, and the natural world, as well as his desire to expand American knowledge and influence. The expedition's success provided valuable information about the western frontier and native peoples, further encouraging settlement and westward migration, which Jefferson believed were essential to the Republic's prosperity. Throughout his presidency, Jefferson promoted policies aimed at reducing the size and scope of the federal government, consistent with his belief in limited government. He sought to cut government spending, reduce the national debt, and eliminate internal taxes, relying instead on customs duties and land sales for revenue. Jefferson's administration also worked to scale back the military, reflecting his hope that the United States could maintain its security through diplomacy and a citizen militia rather than a large standing army. These measures were part of Jefferson's broader effort to protect individual liberties by preventing government overreach and preserving states' rights, principles that continued to influence American political debates. Jefferson's dedication to education was another hallmark of his vision for the nation. After his presidency, he founded the University of Virginia, an institution designed to cultivate an educated citizenry capable of self-government and public service. Jefferson believed that a republic could only endure if its people were informed and engaged, and he saw education as a vital means to achieve this goal. The University of Virginia embodied Jefferson's Enlightenment ideals, emphasizing the sciences and modern languages alongside classical studies. It was also notable for its innovative design and governance, reflecting Jefferson's architectural skills and progressive educational philosophy. Jefferson died on July 4, 1826, the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, a coincidence that underscored his profound connection to the founding of the nation. He passed away on the same day as John Adams, another key figure in American independence, symbolizing the end of an era of revolutionary leaders who had shaped the United States' early trajectory. Jefferson's death marked the close of a life that had been deeply intertwined with the birth and development of the American Republic, a life characterized by intellectual achievement, political innovation, and complex contradictions. Despite the enduring admiration for Jefferson's contributions to American liberty and democracy, his legacy remains complex. He championed ideals of freedom and equality, yet he was a lifelong slave owner who struggled with the moral and political implications of slavery. This contradiction reflects the broader tensions within the United States during its founding period, as the new nation grappled with reconciling its principles with entrenched social realities. Jefferson's life and career embody this duality, illustrating both the promise and the challenges of the American experiment. As a statesman, Jefferson's influence extended beyond his presidency through his writings, policies, and the institutions he helped establish. His vision of a republic grounded in individual rights, limited government, and an agrarian economy shaped American political discourse for generations. Jefferson's emphasis on education, scientific inquiry, and westward expansion also left a lasting imprint on the nation's cultural and geographic landscape. While debates about his legacy continue, Jefferson remains a towering figure in American history, whose ideas and actions helped define the United States during its formative years. If you loved the story, like the video and subscribe.